In the summer of 1859, United States infantry and the British Royal Navy locked into a military standoff. Cannons were loaded, rifles were drawn, and two global empires were perched on the edge of war over a potato-eating pig. The setting was San Juan Island in the Pacific Northwest. It was a disputed borderland where British employees of the Hudson's Bay Company and American pioneers lived in uneasy proximity. The tension broke on the morning of June 15th. An American farmer named Lyman Cutler walked outside to find a large black Berkshire boar rooting through his potato patch. Cutler grabbed his rifle and shot it dead. The pig belonged to Charles Griffin, an agent for the British Hudson's Bay Company. Cutler went to Griffin's home and offered $10 in compensation. Griffin refused, demanding a steep $100 instead, and told Cutler it was up to him to keep his potatoes out of the pig. Because San Juan Island lacked a recognized legal authority to handle a property dispute, the argument created a dangerous vacuum. Fearing arrest by British officials, the American settlers sent a message to the mainland calling for military protection. This map shows the broad territorial boundaries of North America in the mid-19th century. To see why there were no local courts to settle the matter, we have to look back to the Treaty of Oregon in 1846. The treaty drew the international boundary westward to the coast, and then through the middle of the channel, separating the continent from Vancouver Island. But the document failed to specify exactly which channel they meant. There are two main waterways navigating this archipelago. The United States claimed the border ran through the Haro Strait to the west. Great Britain claimed the Rosario Strait to the east. Because of that vague phrasing, both nations possessed genuine, legally sound justifications for claiming sole sovereignty over the islands trapped in the middle. Two rival powers claimed the exact same piece of land. The flawed treaty turned San Juan Island into a geopolitical powder keg, requiring only a single dead farm animal to detonate. In 1859, the United States moved first. Brigadier General William Harney, an officer with a reputation for anti-British sentiment, used the pig incident to aggressively assert the American claim. Without consulting Washington, he dispatched Captain George Pickett and 64 infantrymen to occupy the island. British Columbia's Governor James Douglas immediately retaliated. He dispatched 3 heavily armed Royal Navy warships, commanded by Captain Geoffrey Hornby, with orders to dislodge the Americans from the island. Within weeks, hundreds of soldiers and dozens of heavy naval guns were facing off. Both sides possessed standing orders to defend themselves if attacked, yet neither side wanted to pull the trigger. This is exactly how mechanical escalation operates. When local commanders with unchecked jurisdictions are left to their own devices, they will inevitably push a situation to the brink of war. With cannons loaded and rifles drawn, a singular question remains: why did no one fire the first shot? The answer lies in the restraint of the officers on the ground. Despite holding overwhelming naval firepower, Captain Hornby refused to escalate the conflict. He chose not to land his troops or fire on the Americans without direct, explicit orders from London. The brinksmanship of local politicians stood in stark and dramatic contrast to the professional military judgment of the battlefield commanders. They recognized the absurdity of the situation and held their fire. In moments where complex legal systems and treaties fail, individual human restraint often becomes the final buffer against catastrophic conflict. It took several weeks for news of the standoff to cross the North American continent and reach the seats of government across the Atlantic. When the reports reached Washington, D.C., federal officials were horrified. They faced the prospect of a third war with Britain over livestock. Across the ocean in London, the British government shared that exact same disbelief. To find an immediate diplomatic fix, the U.S. dispatched General Winfield Scott to the region. He negotiated a joint military occupation of the island to de-escalate the immediate threat. This forced a surreal 12-year occupation. British and American soldiers lived peacefully, competing in friendly camp athletic matches. The absurdity of the crisis forced the highest levels of government to reclaim authority and enforce a cooling-off period. In 1871, the two nations signed the Treaty of Washington. They agreed to resolve the map issue by handing the decision to neutral third-party arbitration. They selected Kaiser Wilhelm I of Germany to objectively review the geographic evidence and make a final, binding choice. In 1872, the Kaiser issued his ruling. He determined the U.S. interpretation of the treaty was correct, officially setting the permanent international border through the Horo Strait. Accepting the legal decision, the British Royal Marines packed up their camp and withdrew their forces from the island. The Pig War easily could have triggered a major international conflict. Instead, it showed that even explosive geopolitical crises can be diffused through patience, legal process, and human restraint.